Welcome to Uncanny X-Minutes, where we bring you the comics behind the movies. I'm Stasha.
I'm producer James.
And we are here to discuss X2 X-Men United, minutes 130 to 134, except not really. We're not going to talk about the credits.
Well, you took my thunder. You want to know what happens? Nothing but credits.
I did. I ruined it.
You ruined it. So for these 4 minutes, we're talking about nothing but credits. But not even the good credits, like the end of the credits, where it's all the like...
The corporations. Yeah, it's boring.
The thank yous and the, here's what music we used. And no, I'm kidding. We're not talking about that at all. Instead, we are going to talk about something that we've been holding on to for so long.
It's been really hard.
Because X-Men 97 came out like while we've been doing this movie, obviously.
Yeah.
And there are times we want to talk about it, but it's like the show wasn't over. Yeah. We want to give people time. That's the thing. Like, spoiler alert, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. Excellent.
Everyone who has any interest in X-Men should be watching this.
100%.
So we figured this gives us enough time to give everyone the chance to watch the whole thing before we discuss it. And then from now on the table.
Yeah, X-Men 97 is on the table. And when we talk about the X3 movie, we'll probably talk about it. Because it's actually kind of important. Because,
I think we talked about... Just like this is partially like we talked about in detail Fatal Attraction.
Yes.
And then I think like 1 or 2 weeks later from the recording, not like when we release it, but when we recorded it, sat down and recorded it, they did it in the cartoon. And we were like, oh, dip.
Yeah, we're like, oh, I'm so glad. That was the thing I really liked. We're just going to jump right in.
Let's just jump right in.
The thing I really liked about X-Men 97 was just the fact that they did pick kind of like they had a mix of really famous comic stuff, but also a lot of the not so famous, because I think the animated series had the benefit of doing all the big stuff really early in the original series in the 90s. So this one had to pick a little bit more esoteric, that's not true. I mean, some of these are huge in my opinion, but if you're an X-Men comic book fan, but if you're not, these are definitely probably ones you haven't heard of.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm angry at X-Men 97.
Oh, yeah?
For a very weird reason. I created this show because some people, the only way they knew X-Men was the movies.
Right.
And the movies are fun. I love the movies. I love them all for whatever reasons I have. They are not representative of what the comics are most of the time, like 95% of the time. Then X-Men 97 comes out. And I was like, oh, dip, these are the comics. This is the best representation of what the comics are in a visual medium.
Yeah.
Kind of not undoing, but like beating us to the chase of like I said, nobody knew what a Fatal Attractions was probably if you didn't read the comics. And here it is. Here it is in a part of an episode. Like we used a lot of the big elements of Fatal Attractions and we put them in an episode.
Yeah. I kind of think that
I'm not actually angry.
I
love that this show is putting something so forward.
Yeah.
And like you said, mixing the elements together, but still the heart and the core of the storylines and of what the comics represent is front and center.
The points of the stories are still there, and that's the best thing that they could have done. I think that like when people talk about adaptations, I don't think things have to be exactly like the comic books.
Right.
And X-Men 97, let me tell you, is not exactly like the comic books. There are storylines that there are different villains, there are different people, like whatever.
Well, I mean, it's like a lot of them are like they're different eras.
Right.
You know, it's either the Claremont era or it's the Jim Lee era or
Scott
it's
Lobdell.
Yeah, like, or New X-Men or whatever. Like, so the teams are completely different.
Right.
You know, there's some elements that are like Cyclops is in most of them.
Right.
Sure. But like, where's Colossus? You know, there are certain elements where it's like, well, this character did the thing. Well, we just swap it with a different character because it really doesn't matter that character did it. It matters that a character did it.
Right. And then like basically keeping the themes that they were trying to get across with those stories to explain to a new audience in this new medium. I think that they did a really good job. Yeah. I really admire them bringing what I really wanted to see from my X-Men comics to a TV show.
I think we're going to start entering a golden age of adaptation.
I hope so.
There are two that do it. This and then the One Piece live action.
It was very good too, yeah.
And both of them do a very similar thing, which is like you said, not like a one-for-one adaptation, but like it's like you sat down and go, what is X-Men?
Right.
If we're going to do an X-Men show, what needs to be in there? What themes need to be in there? What storylines do we want to do? But like not being beholden to everything that comes between the elements. We're not just telling the stories chronologically like an anime does from manga.
Right.
We're doing like, we're picking and choosing, but we're like threading them together
to make it, and to me it makes sense because it is that concept of, oh, these storylines come together and they blend in this new different way, and that's like excellent because it shows like this kind of culture, right? Like the X-Men are kind of a drama. We've talked about this, and that means that like stuff should be happening to them all the time, like, and so the way that you thread these storylines together instead of being like recreation of this plot line and then recreation of this plot line, it also
flows
could get
better. It could get predictable if you do that.
Yeah, you get Monster of the Weeky.
Whereas this, you don't realize you're in the middle of the storyline until something's about to happen, and then you're like, "Oh no, that's what we're doing."
Yeah, you're like, "Oh god."
So I thought what we would do here, instead of like running through the whole show,
we're
not just going to spend 30 minutes saying how amazing it is, because we could. Me and you watched, I'd say about half of them together.
We did. It was really fun.
We would record an episode, and then we happened to do it on a lot of Wednesdays.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, do we sit and watch the episode right now? Let's do it.
Well, why not?
And it's a bunch of me and you gasping and like going, oh, and Brian being like, what's happening?
Who's that?
Should I know who that is? No, you should not.
Yes. No, it's okay. I'll explain it to you later.
No, that's a funny joke. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
We thought we'd go over sort of so you've seen X-Men 97. What books did they use?
Yeah.
Like what storylines did they grab that you could be like, oh, just go into Marvel Unlimited. You put in that story arc and here you go. Here it is. Let's read it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to name some that I found?
Yes, please.
All right. So number one, Inferno. We've talked about this on the show before.
You know what's funny? I'm going to cut you off already. You got a magazine from Disney that was like, had a special article like, ooh, the X-Men the X-Men 97's coming. And I was looking at it and I was like, that's a pregnant Jean Grey on the front. I go, that's Madeline Pryor. And you're like, no, it says right here. And even in the text, it said, this is Jean Grey. Spoiler, let's be honest. If you got to this far, you should watch X-Men 97. I was like, oh, it's Madeline. Like they as the end of like episode 2 or something, where they're just like, no, that was Madeline Pryor the whole time.
Yeah, it was, and it's like confusing. And so the Inferno is like Madeline Pryor, Goblin Queen. She kind of makes inanimate objects animate. It like takes over New York. In X-Men 97, it's a much smaller story, but the essence is there.
The essence is very
It's
there.
like Scott is confused between Jean and his wife Madeline, who is Jean Grey's clone, and
the mother of Cable, which isn't Cable at the time, it's Nathan.
It's Nathan Christopher, but like whatever. The point is the essence of like Scott getting caught between Jean and her clone, and then having a child with the clone, and then Jean trying to step in and also be cognizant of it, but then Madeline kind of feeling abandoned by Scott, justifiably so.
They even the show put a new wrinkle in it, because like I'm sure we've talked about this before, but Jean dies. Scott dates Madeline. Madeline isn't drawn the same way, but later is drawn to look just like Jean, and you're like, wow, she looks a lot like Jean. And then it turns out she's a clone of Jean. This, they made it where it's like, oh no, it's Jean. Wait, no, it's not Jean. It's a clone of Jean. And now we don't know when the switch happened. And we don't know how much of the relationship has been with the clone or with real Jean, quote unquote, real Jean.
Yeah.
So they made it even murkier for the relationship,
which I think was the correct decision.
Like, if you could go back, that's what you would do.
For sure. And like the reason that it wasn't done like that is because Madeline Pryor wasn't Jean Grey. That was a retcon.
Exactly.
But the benefit of 97 is that you know the retcon, so you can just plan for it from the beginning and make it confusing. Jean Grey and Madeline Pryor share memories, and they don't know when they split.
Exactly.
And so even they don't know.
The only thing they do know is that Madeline is Nate's mother.
Correct.
That's it.
That's all they've got.
That's all I knew. I watched this entire series with my kids. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was the first moment of, wait, what's going on? When Jean shows up at the front door, my kids were justifiably confused and delightfully excited for the next episode because I wouldn't tell them what was happening.
I also feel like the birth of Nathan Christopher, who we know is Cable, that was the other. I remember when they found out that was Cable, and I wish I could relive that moment, right, of not knowing that.
I almost blew it.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about stuff, and I was like, I almost said the name Cable, and I was just like, nope, Nathan, baby Nathan.
Yeah.
Baby Nathan, I kept having to say. So when the reveal happens, my daughters were like, wait, what?
Incredible.
Loved it because it is something that most ex people know.
Right.
It's not a secret
anymore.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. But now it's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. It's Cable, and like it's fun. So if you liked that plot with Madeline Pryor, it's not going to be quite exactly the same. No. But if you liked Inferno.
Well, a lot of these I feel like are bigger in the comics because they were their own big event. And in the cartoon, they sometimes scaled them down because bigger events are going to happen and you can't overshadow them with like, oh, remember that time where mailboxes were eating people? Like, no. We're going to have big events happening this season. We can't be doing that too.
Yeah. But if you are interested, you could read Uncanny X-Men 239 to 243. And X Factor 36 to 39. You could sprinkle some New Mutants in there if you want to take my recommendations and read 71 to 73. But the main two are the Uncanny X-Men and the X Factor. Those are the issues, and you kind of have to read X Factor because X Factor is where
this is the original team.
This is the original team with Scott,
right? So that's where the drama is,
right? So you have to read X Factor, but I would also read the Uncanny X-Men just so you also know the context of what's going on with Inferno. It is great. I was a big fan of that one. So
yeah, it's funny. The episode before had basically the entire trial of Magneto.
Yeah,
but different because as we've previously discussed. The original trial of Magneto is him getting off because he was de-aged and re-aged.
Yeah.
And that's not how he gets off on this.
No,
so you kind of can't do that.
No, they kind of really were like, well, let's not use that. That's a little too comic booky, which I get. That was a little wild.
They used Executioner instead.
Yeah.
Because it was what the Fenris twins came in the original trial of Magneto.
Yeah, and so they used Executioner.
Which is a much better, because then that leads into Storm losing her powers.
Right.
Which leads into another storyline.
Life Death.
Life Death.
Life Death is excellent. We've actually talked about Life Death briefly before.
Yeah.
Like this is how you know.
I'm so bad at this show. This X-Men 97 goes and tells you what we've already been telling you, and thank you for doing that. It's you should still read the comics, but now we're gonna start being able to shorthand into the cartoon.
I do love this though because it makes me feel better about the ones that we've picked because almost all of them that we've talked about are in the show. Yeah. And I'm like, great. So we knew what we were talking about. We did a good overview.
We are hitting the hits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm also going way in the weeds sometimes, but we are bringing out the hits.
So Life Death, I feel like that one was actually pretty close. Yeah. Like I didn't think that Life Death was really that different. There is a little bit of abbreviation, obviously, of the relationship.
Right.
Where, like, Storm finds out that he shot her, like, he was the one who invented the gun that depowered her, but they, like, reconcile within, like, a couple episodes. The comic books draw that drama out, as you would expect a soap opera to. Right. So, like, for me, I don't know, like, did you feel like I didn't have an issue with them shortening it.
I didn't. I actually haven't read Life Death.
Okay. Well, Life Death is 84. It's Claremont. And I think it's Uncanny X-Men 186. So start there.
Okay.
So if you liked, the Storm, like kind of finding herself, I highly suggest.
Oh, I will read it. Don't get me wrong. I haven't used it in this show yet. So I don't. So I didn't grab onto it yet. But yeah, it's definitely worth it.
I think like Forge is also such a complicated person, and he's kind of a jerk. He's written kind of a jerk a lot.
Yeah.
Life Death softens him in a way of like you see why. Because Storm is the best, right? Everybody loves Storm. This is a factual statement. You can't not like Storm.
Unless you just watch her in the movies.
They do such a good job in the comics of explaining, in my opinion, how Storm falls in love with Forge and then also feels betrayed by him. That it is just like, because Aurora's character is so rich, it like helps that too. And Forge comes up with that, I think. Like he gets a huge boost. When I think of Forge, I literally always think of life, death first.
Yeah.
Always. And I know that's not even like his biggest story, but to me it is.
It's that drama though. You know, like
it's huge.
If you go through somebody's drama, that's where you're like you'll get more connected to them.
Yeah. I think Forge's like personality came through in Life Death for me, and I think it was just much more compelling than all of his other books, and it makes him a little bit more sympathetic, and he's not just like this dude's working for the government. Like big fan. I like it. Life Death is excellent.
Right.
And God, there's so many things I still want to talk about. Look, anyway, read
Life Death.
Read Life Death.
Basically what you're saying.
Yeah, read Life Death. The other thing that I want to touch on before we run out of time is I want to talk about Genosha.
Yeah.
And
so the storyline is E for Extinction, the new X-Men run where Genosha is obliterated.
Yeah.
They kind of combine it with like a Krakoan Hellfire Gala.
Yes, they did. They did do a little bit of that.
They kind of wanted Krakoa to like, they wanted Genosha to feel like Krakoa.
Yeah.
And I think they did a great job with that.
There was multiple times where we were sitting there together and we're like, are they going to go right into Krakoa? Like we really thought it was going to happen. They didn't.
You're moving too fast. You're
running out of comics.
You can't do that. But yes, like a mega, I don't know what they term it, the huge sentinel, the like kaiju sentinel that they use.
Oh, in the comics, it's a wild sentinel.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what 97 called it, but it's like a giant.
It almost looks like a master mold,
but it's moving. But it's not.
But it's not a master mold.
Yeah,
it is the first point in this show where you go, oh no, they are not messing around.
Yeah,
I mean, they depowered Storm in this show. And I was still like, oh, that stinks. But like, I get.
She'll get it back.
She'll get it back. Let's be honest. This was the first point where I was like, oh no, there are consequences.
Yeah, they do like the full destruction of Genosha. They kill off Gambit during the fall of Genosha.
Which, that's not how it happened in the comics. So thus, us watching it, we're like, oh.
Yeah. It was a shocker. However, upon rereading, so this is really interesting, and I thought that maybe this might have been a nod to something in the comics. So in this, Genosha is this destruction. It's all kind of masterminded by Bastion, which in the comics it's not Bastion, it's Cassandra Nova. But we'll talk about that in a different day.
We'll talk about that when Deadpool and Wolverine come out, probably.
Yep, probably. So there is the thing with Bastion, and he also has the Prime Sentinels, where he turns humans into Sentinels. So the destruction of Genosha is like the first part of the plan, and then the second part is like humans all over the world wake up and they're Sentinels, and they've been like kind of sleeper agents or whatever, and their goal is to kill all mutants. That storyline is Operation Zero Tolerance. So those storylines are kind of pushed together. Like it starts with E for Extinction, and then it's Operation Zero Tolerance. But in Operation Zero Tolerance, that is when Gambit is kicked out of the X-Men.
Okay.
For his role in the Mutant Massacre.
There it is.
That's when the drama comes out. There are multiple times in the comic book where Rogue is saying that Gambit's gone. People are like, oh my God, he died? And she's like, he's dead to me. And so I felt that was really interesting because I was rereading those comics, and I was like, so they kill him actually in X-Men 97, but in the storyline, in the comics, he is gone. Symbolically dead to them because he has betrayed them.
Right.
Like, it is a really interesting, like...
Yeah, but then you can't have her going all around the world messing everybody up.
That's different. Yeah, that changed.
That was... and that's what I like about the show is they've written themselves into a point where they're like, well, how would she naturally respond? Not a way that's happened in the comics, then we're just going to do it.
Right, yeah.
And they did it. I
did like that. I think that Rogue being angry, like her kind of...
It's how she's dealing with the grief, which is just different than everyone else. And that is always a bold way to go, where you're like, we're going to do something that the comics didn't do. This isn't a reference that I know of anything. This is just how we think this would happen. But the way that they had written it to that point, you're like, believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm here for it.
You do believe it. I mean, this all culminates in kind of the Magneto We didn't talk about this, but Magneto is running the X-Men at the beginning of this. Professor X is not here.
which also is the New Mutants
The
run,
New
where
Mutant run, yeah.
he's a headmaster, and when we had Nick on, we talked about
it.
that.
Yeah. And you guys can jump back to that episode if you're curious. They play with that.
They even give him the headmaster like outfit for like half of this season, maybe more.
It's pretty cute. There's not really the New Mutants there, so the balance of powers is a little different.
There is one New Mutant. Roberto da Costa gets added to the cast.
That's true.
Which, once again, he got added in the New Mutants, not individually.
Right.
So in this show, he gets added individually and as a love interest for Jubilee, which once again didn't happen in the comics, but is, once again, I'm fine with.
Totally compelling. Very interesting.
And I think that is the difference.
Yeah.
Like, we've been nitpicking stuff like, oh, Rogue and Iceman being together, that's kind of a weird thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think it is the writing. Like, it's just not compelling that they're together. They're just together because they happen to be attractive in the same age.
Right. They don't, like... But Jubilee and like Sunspot are so like the characters are accurate, and then that's why you trust them with Rogue.
I think that's what it is. I think
the characters are there.
I think it's the accuracy. Is that Rogue and Iceman? Maybe it's not even the fact they're together. It's like, well, that's not Rogue and that's not Iceman.
So I can't even imagine this playing out because these are not even the characters I recognize.
But with Sunspot and Jubilee, it's like, oh, that is 100% what both of them are.
And that's exactly how they would react. And so you can buy their love story because you know those characters, you recognize them. And you're like, yeah, that's how they would respond to some situations.
Yeah.
And you can buy it. And I think that that's the same with Rogue. The other relationship that they touch on a little bit here, which I was really surprised about, which is Rogue and Magneto.
Which I had to explain is a thing to my kids. They're like, wait, what's going on? I was like, no, that's accurate.
Age of Apocalypse is kind of the big thing for that.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that they played into it here, but I liked it. Like, cause I was like, okay, well, like that their relationship has always been kind of complicated and kind of interesting. And some of the stuff that they were talking on in the books is from Age of Apocalypse. It's about him helping her learn how to touch people using magnet powers. That's actually in the that's Age of Apocalypse. Just read Age of Apocalypse. I'm sure we've recommended that before.
It's long but worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, I thought that was really interesting. And then to have her pick Gambit and then to have him die.
Woo.
That was incredible. Like, I thought that was really well done. And I think that like, and it made it believable, right? Like she made a decision, but he died anyway.
Right.
Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's so X-Men. It's so dramatic. It's so
X-Men.
It's like, what is the most heart-wrenching thing that can happen? Let's do that one. Exactly. Thank you.
and then later when Magneto ends up like doing the heel turn.
Yeah.
And it's back to being Magneto, not Headmaster. That leads Rogue to jumping to his side.
To the implied Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, perhaps. Yeah.
And this is the Fatal Attraction storyline that we have previously talked about.
Yep.
Where it was originally Colossus that went to Magneto's side.
Yeah.
And so once again, switching the character, but they've written it in such a way that you're like, I believe that character at that moment would take that side. And then Sunspot is the other one who goes to his side as well.
And leaves Jubilee.
More drama.
Right. And also completely accurate.
Yeah.
Like, Roberto has always been a little bit selfish of a character generally, and also a little bit like hot-headed and spiteful. Like, when he has Sam as his foil, as his best friend in the New Mutants, he gets muted because Sam is such like a very charming, good guy. Like, you know, like golly shucks kind of
good
person.
Old boy.
Yeah. But it tracks. Sam is not here. And so Roberto it kind of does fall more onto like the Magneto side when he doesn't have the counterbalance. Like, even if you know the characters and they're making different decisions, you believe them because you understand, like, the person who wrote this understood how these characters worked and why they were the way they were, so they could play with that. And I think it's so good.
And while that's going on, I'm sure you were with this one we didn't watch together, but I'm sure you were the same way as me. As you're going, oh no, they're gonna pull Wolverine's adamantium out.
Oh, a second that they got into the
Asteroid M.
Yep. I was like, oh no, here we go. Let's do it.
This is one of those instances where it's like, if you've read the comics, you know how this is gonna play out, and it's not gonna hurt any less.
Right. Yeah.
And if you haven't read the comics, it's extremely surprising.
Yeah, that he actually is going to pull out the Wolverine's adamantium. And because especially they've set up Magneto for a lot of the series, like we were talking about how Magneto was running the school. At some point in X-Men 97, Professor X comes back. He leaves Lilandra. whatever. I don't really care about that storyline. The important part, though, is
there are interesting. The thing is, there are interesting elements in these storylines, but like from what we're talking about, the comic book storylines are not as compelling to like discuss in the comics.
Exactly.
Cartoon discussion.
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not really like as interesting, but I do like. So they build up Magneto as kind of a good guy. Like the X-Men distrust him. Scott is very like upset when he's like, why did Professor not trust me to do this? And like, except to run the X-Men or whatever. You have that all coming together. And then when Magneto makes his heel turn at the end of the series, you have followed him. He's almost like been the Professor X character. So like you've been kind of sitting with him and being like, yeah, I mean, like he's got a point, right? Like,
it's funny when we had George on,
yes,
and he was just doing his Magneto was right rant.
Yes.
He's right with the comic books Magneto.
Correct.
They use the term Magneto was right in the cartoons, but the way they have written Magneto through this entire X-Men 97 arc, he was right, but he's right in the sense of like, humanity is going to disappoint you.
Yeah.
Like I want to do Charles's dream, but I know I'm going to get disappointed, and that is how I'm going to react to that.
You're right.
And then Genosha gets attacked, and you're like, well...
Yeah, it's a crazy massacre. It's terrible. Yeah, and then you see his heel turn, and like, while you might disagree with him, while you might hope that he would take Xavier's hand again, you know that he's not going to. And like, it makes sense. Like, you've seen the character from A to Z. Even you don't have to read the comic books to understand that plot, which I think is awesome. But if you have, you also, you know, it matches, it works, it makes sense to you.
And in this, it is Operation Zero Tolerance happening at the same time as Fatal Attractions.
That's crazy. I know,
which is nuts.
So silly.
So I mean, you got kind of two villains at the same time, but like one of them is like a moral fight between Professor X and Magneto, and the other one is like more of a standard superhero battle.
Right. Yeah, and it makes sense. I think
then they
that's
set up. They set up like 2 or 3 more storylines, which I don't want to go into.
Okay.
Because if you enjoy the cartoons, let's be honest, you want to kind of be surprised. I feel like, I know for me, when it comes to, if there's a movie based on a book, I'd rather watch the movie first. Because the movie is going to be enjoyable. And then if I go and read the book is going to be enjoyable in a different way. Like there's more, you get more added when you get to the original source material. Whereas the cartoon is like, here is some greatest hits. We're gonna weave them masterfully. Enjoy yourself. And then if you went back and read the comics, they're their own beast that is also just as heart-wrenching, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. So we won't talk about it, but if there's another season, I'm sure we'll do another one of these wrap-ups.
There's at least 2 or 3 storylines that they've already set up that they're doing.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I am kind of curious how and if they'll bring Gambit back. Like, I'm curious about that. I think they will. I feel like he's so beloved. Like, but to swap out for Nightcrawler was a very good decision.
Yes. Nightcrawler is one of those characters, because we've obviously shown our love for Nightcrawler throughout this podcast, that him missing in the animated series is so sad. Him and Colossus are gone.
Yeah.
They're just not there. And they get their moments in, but they're not
main
there.
characters. Yeah.
Like Nightcrawler wasn't Nightcrawler.
No.
This Nightcrawler was exactly what we were discussing. So once again, I got angry. Like, we were just talking about this, and here he is in full swashbuckling glory.
I guess all that to say that it is very obvious that the people who wrote X-Men 97 love X-Men, and we see it.
Know it.
Yeah. And we see it in them.
Because you can, let's be honest, there's a lot of comic book movies about actors or directors or whatever that love the source material. They say they do, but it's like sometimes they miss the point.
Yeah.
And you can tell. This has the essence of X-Men.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to know what X-Men is like without reading 1,000 comics or even just reading some comics, here it is. Distilled and just delicious.
Yeah. And man, it's so enjoyable. And they're like, legitimately, there's so many tiny little like jokes and so many tiny little in things for, like, if you have read comics and you know these characters, you get a little joke on the side or whatever. But if you haven't, it is completely irrelevant and it doesn't matter.
I just want to point out one joke that, for the purposes of this podcast, was perfect. And that is Cable getting handed a uniform by Cyclops. And he's like, what, you want me to dress up like a circus clown or something to that effect? And Scott turns around and goes, what were you expecting? Black leather?
Yes.
Which is totally the reverse of what happens in the first X-Men movie, which at the time was like, why would you wear yellow spandex? And now we're at the point where Deadpool and Wolverine, he is going to be wearing the yellow spandex finally.
Right.
Like, we have now come from full circle to let's finally do what we should have been doing this whole time.
The beginning. And it's like, what do you expect? Black leather? Like, we're superheroes.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think that was such a funny joke. And it wasn't mean-spirited.
No.
It was just funny.
Back. That's all it did.
It was a really
you poke
cute.
us, we're gonna poke you back a little.
I liked it a lot.
Yeah, because it is more like, you know what? We're the comic books.
Right. It was okay being what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can be you. We're the comic. The comic books are back, baby.
Yeah. Ugh, love it.
All right. Well, now we've run out of time.
Definitely.
We could have probably gone for 2 hours just talking
I
about
have
the entire.
way more notes that we're just gonna throw
I
away.
didn't even take notes. I just wrote down the different storylines that came up because I knew we could. We both rewatched the entire season in 1 week just to talk about it.
It was absolutely worth it.
Oh, I'd do it again for no reason.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's I think we're done. We're done with this.
Great.
We're done with this season.
Oh yeah.
X2, X-Men United. We're putting a little period on it. We're gonna take a couple of weeks break, and we'll come back with X-Men The Last Stand. I don't think there's a 3 on there.
No, there isn't. I always call it X3, and it's definitely not what it's
not
called.
X3. I thought maybe it was X-Men 3 The Last Stand. I will look into it.
It's not. It's
You'll
just
know
The
when
Last
we
Stand.
do our next intro.
Yeah.
But we'll come back for season 3, X-Men The Last Stand.
All right. I've been your host, Tasha.
I'm producer James.
And we'll see you for the next 10.